This is Richard Wolff from Democracy at Work, responding to another Ask Prof. Wolff question from our Patreon community. This one comes from Polluters Cared, that's the name on the question. Good question. It asks about economic growth. Why is that such an issue in and for capitalist economies? And is it possible to have an economic system that wasn't as growth-focused as the one we live in? The answer is about capitalism, as you might expect. Capitalism is a system that has baked into it the imperative, the urgent demand upon every employer and every capitalist to grow. This is not a demand that they do something nice or that they do something positive. It's a kind of a carrot and stick. If you grow, you will have an advantage over your competitors. But if you don't, they will have an advantage over you, so you better. Let me explain. Think of a capitalist who produces anything. Software program, ice cream cones, haircuts, it doesn't matter. But he or she has competitors, others who produce software, ice cream cones, and so forth. If you grow, that is, you expand your business, you sell more of whatever it is you produce, you will then be in a position to hire more people. And that will enable you to grow your output, which, if you sell it, will enable you to hire more people. That's called economic growth. And what it means is, among other things that grow, are your profits. That is the difference between your costs and your revenues. Why is that important? Well, I'm going to give you just 2 or 3 examples. Suppose a machine comes along that could make it much more efficient to produce the software or the ice cream cones or whatever it is. But it's an expensive piece of machinery. If you've been growing and your profit has gotten larger, you will be able to afford that machinery, which will give you a jump on your competitors who haven't grown enough to get their profit to the point where they can afford that machine. Your having grown gives you the chance to buy the machine and get an advantage over your competitors. But by the same token, if you haven't grown, but your competitors have, they will afford the machine, you won't, and they will be able to undercut you by lowering their price because they have the more efficient machine. In other words, growing your business means growing your profit, means growing the fund you have to survive competitively. Suppose your competitor has, for whatever reason, the ability to attract more customers than you do. If your profits are large enough, you can deal with that situation by taking a portion of your profits and buying advertising, trying to persuade clients or customers to come to you rather than your competitor, who's doing that in reverse. Once again, the more you've grown, the bigger your profit, the better your chances of surviving or thriving in the competition. Therefore, in capitalism, one of the starkest qualities it shows, quite different from feudalism or slavery or other systems, is a kind of hysterical growth. Well, look, we're now facing, as a planet, one of the dire consequences of this baked-in drive to grow. We have despoiled nature. We have ripped up our forests, our oceans, our air, our water, in order to grow more. Even now to the point that we feel threatened in terms of global warming, in terms of the climate crisis, threatened by a growth imperative that is part of capitalism. And one of the reasons there is so much difficulty getting people, even those who understand climate science, who understand the dangers to our environment, getting even them on board to do something about it is because of the clash between the profit-driven capitalism on the one hand and coping with our environmental degradation on the other. People whose livelihoods, people whose businesses, people whose whole way of living is wrapped up with a growth-driven, profit-driven capitalism begin to understand that really dealing with the environment, questioning growth, is questioning the capitalist system around which they've built their lives, and they're either not willing or not able to do that. To the last part of your question, is it possible to have an economic system that doesn't do this? The answer is, of course. Do away with the profit motive. Do away with the capitalist competitive craziness. Have a society that doesn't make decisions around how do I survive, how do I make more profit, how do I defeat my competitor. Something that we already had under feudalism, slavery, and other systems, we could now have without the bad parts of those systems, but with an arrangement that doesn't despoil our environment because we're not driven to grow like crazy. Capitalists have always told us we have to allow them to go crazy with the growth because that will ensure our wonderful standard of living. Well, that was never true. You could have had a better standard of living if you had done less in the way of despoiling nature and more in the use of technology to free up time, not to produce more goods, but to free up our time for the relationships and the feelings and the emotions that make life what it is. We can get that again, but we would have to understand that the capitalist system stands in the way, and if we want to get to a non-growth driven, non-ecological, disastrous economic system, we have to confront and go beyond capitalism.